A new addition to Photoshop CC 2015 that designers are going to enjoy is the GLYPHS panel. It's very similar to the GLYPHS panel in other Adobe applications like InDesign. To bring up the GLYPHS panel, you need to go into Window and click on GLYPHS. Then the GLYPHS panel comes up, and what you can do with this panel is look at all the characters that a font contains. This drop-down menu here allows you to choose a font. You can choose the style of that font. We'll just leave it at regular for this example. And then you can click on the type tool and select a character, and you can choose something like alternate for font selection. This will show you alternates for whatever you currently have selected, in this case the number 0. So I can double click on the 0 with the slash through it to switch that font. Not every character has an alternate character. For example, if I highlight the letter C, notice that there's nothing in the alternates. I can also come into this drop-down menu and choose entire font to see all the characters in that font, or I can display them by category. For example, punctuation, dashes and quotes, symbols, and designer favorites. If you want to add a character, just simply click in the section where you want to add the character and double click on the character in the box, and it will appear on your text. In Photoshop CC 2015, layer styles got a major upgrade. Let me show you how they work. I have two layers here, a background layer, which is gray, and a text layer. I'm going to double click off to the side on the text layer to bring up the layer style window. If you notice, the left hand side column is completely different than it was in previous versions. We now have this plus sign next to some layer styles, and we also have different icons here in the bottom. Let me show you how they work. In Photoshop CC 2015, you can now create multiple instances of the same layer style. For example, stroke. I'm going to apply a stroke. I'm going to make the stroke red, and I'm going to change the position to outside. Then I'm going to increase the size, and as you can see, my text now has a red stroke. If I click on the plus sign, I add a second stroke. There's one in the top, one in the bottom. The one on top, I can now switch to maybe white and then decrease the size, and you'll see that we now have two strokes, a white one and a red one. These additional layer styles work a lot like layers, where the one on top hides the one below it, assuming that opacity is 100% and blend mode is at normal. You can also click on these layer styles and use the arrows here at the bottom to change the positioning. So if I click on the red stroke and then click on this icon here, it's going to push it to the top. So now the white stroke is below the red one. If I increase the size, you'll see the white stroke around the text. And I can again push that one on top of the red one again if I want to, or bring it back down by using these arrows here. You can also delete layer styles. For example, this white stroke. If I click on this trash can icon, I delete that stroke. I can actually delete the first one as well, and I can also delete layer styles that have not been applied, for example, bevel and emboss. In fact, if I click on this FX icon, I can delete hidden effects, which means that I'll delete every effect that I have not applied. In this case, I had no effects applied, so all the layer styles get deleted. But I can easily bring them back by selecting them from the list. For example, I can choose stroke again, or maybe drop shadow, or I can simply click on show all effects and all the effects come back. One of the ways that I see these new layer styles being beneficial is with drop shadows. I'm going to disable the stroke for now, and we're going to work with the drop shadow. But before I do that, I'm going to click on styles, and I'm just going to find a style that'll stylize my text. So I'm going to click on this icon here and select text effects, then press OK. And the one that I'm looking for is this one right here. I just wanted to have a bevel and a gradient just so we can work with something that looks more like stylized text. And what I'm going to do now is add a drop shadow, and first I'm going to click and drag the shadow and just put it past the text, and I'm going to increase the opacity to about 92%, so it's really dark, and I'm going to decrease the size. Then I'm going to add a second shadow, and the one below it is going to go out past further, but I'm going to increase the size and bring down the opacity. Then I'm going to create a third shadow, and this one I'm going to push on the right side. But before I do that, I gotta make sure that use global light is unchecked. So let me just put the original back where I had it, which is right about there. Use global light, and I'm gonna click and drag this over to the right, bring down the opacity even more, and increase the size. Then I'm gonna press OK. If I zoom in, you'll see that the shadows are much more realistic because now I have a darker shadow closer to the text, which could be something like a contact shadow, and then a lighter shadow outside of that, and then on the opposite side have a much lighter shadow. And in previous versions of Photoshop, this is sort of the effect that I would have gotten, just one drop shadow. But by stacking shadows together, you get a much more realistic effect. So you can get very creative with the new additions to layer styles in Photoshop CC 20.